I have noted with interest the release by the Law Association concerning the issues of the resumption of hanging, the bail bill, and the criminal defense attorneys, and the reactions that they've received from some members of the public. Certainly, in regard to the issue of hanging, while I certainly respect the views of the Law Association, I must say that my views are different, and I think I stand with the majority of the public who are calling for the implementation of the death penalty. The death penalty is the law, it's on our books, and all we're saying as members of the public is implement the law. So in other words, whatever processes needed to be expedited to ensure that this measure is implemented, so long as it remains the law of Trinidad and Tobago, I firmly support the majority of the public who is calling for that law to be implemented. So on that ground, I differ from the views of the Law Association in that regard. And I know there's some in the Law Association who may have viewed the calls for the resumption of the implementation of the death penalty as a knee-jerk reaction. I look at it differently. I think the public is calling for a neck-jerk reaction. As regards the bail bill and the clauses which seek to expand the areas for the denial of bail, I think that we have to look at it holistically. If we have murder as a non-bailable offense, and we have amended the Constitution to allow for that, then by reason it can be that we, as we develop as our society, sees the need for greater protections, we may be able to expand the categories of offenses which would become non-bailable. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily always going to be limited, or that it has to be limited to murder alone. So it may be possible, but of course I take the point that the criminal justice system also needs to be fixed and expedited so that you don't have a scenario where persons end up languishing in jail without bail, and you don't have a system that causes their matters to be processed in a speedy and timely manner. So they have to go hand in hand. So I think equally with the Attorney General proposing these changes to the bail bill, he must also show hand in hand with that how he is expediting the criminal justice system to ensure that persons are able to get a speedy hearing and a fair hearing at the end of the day. In our constitution, there is no guarantee for a speedy trial, unlike some other constitutions in the Caribbean, for instance, Jamaica. But the point is, the Attorney General has that responsibility to show, well, look, if it is that you are bringing the amendments to the Bail Act, you must also show how you are going to ensure that there is the speeding up of the hearing of these matters so that fairness is done at the end of the day, because we have to balance the scales to ensure that you don't, deprive persons of their basic constitutional rights while trying to ensure the greater good of protection of the society. And lastly, as it relates to the issue of the criminal defense attorneys who may have been vilified and pilloried in the public space, I think that certainly is not acceptable, and I stand fully with the Law Association in their defense of these attorneys, because at the end of the day, it's their job to do, and they have taken an oath to do so. It may not be popular and their jobs may not be easy, but the point is, if they have a client to defend, they have to do so, and they have a right to do so within the limits of the law. So I think we have to be careful not to castigate and cast aspersions on them if that's their job and if that's what they're doing, once they do so within the limits of the law and within the ambit of the law. Because at the end of the day, there may be times when persons in the public space may require their services for a friend, a relative, so therefore it's easy now to cast aspersions on those criminal attorneys. But the point is, when they are needed by certain families, then they appreciate the value of having a good defense attorney in your corner. So we have to be fair, and we have to not be carried away by the emotion of the moment, and understand that they too have a place and a role in the society and within the overall apparatus of the justice system. So in those three respects, I would say I will part ways with the views of the Law Association on the death penalty. I will say that in terms of the bail amendments, we need to find some middle ground in terms of balancing the changes that are proposed with improvements in the expedition of the justice system. And lastly, in terms of the criminal defense attorneys and the Law Association's position on them, I would say that definitely I agree with that, in that we have to be careful not to cross the line to, vilify them unnecessarily if it is that they are simply doing their jobs.